Have you ever wondered about the connection between your emotions and your health? Welcome to Personal Development Mastery, the podcast that helps intelligent, busy professionals develop self-mastery and discover their calling so they can thrive in fulfilling, purposeful lives. I'm your host, Agi Keramidas. Today's episode is one of the top 3 episodes of the year that I have handpicked from the most insightful and popular episodes of Personal Development Mastery podcast in 2024. So if you missed any of them the first time around, I would invite you to listen now. I believe that the themes explored in these particular episodes are the most valuable. Today's episode was originally released in June, and it was number 402. Before I tell you a few things about the episode and dive into the conversation, here's a 20-second snippet to give you an idea.
Realize that when your body doesn't work the way that you want it to, or you don't always understand it, it's never, ever, ever working against you. It is working for you. Your body is your greatest asset. It is your greatest cheerleader. Your body's only purpose is to keep you alive.
In this episode with trauma release expert Evette Rose, we delve into one of my most fascinating topics, the deep connection between our emotions and our health. As you listen, you will discover how our bodies communicate with us, the hidden messages your body sends, and how to interpret them. You will also gain insight into how unresolved emotions can manifest as physical ailments and how to address them. In this particular conversation, I also vulnerably share an example from my own life, my own health, and how the conventional medical system failed to give me the answers I was looking for. Before we get started, I have a quick favor to ask. If you find this podcast beneficial, can you think of someone else you know who might find it useful and share it with them? Not only does this help the podcast grow, you also add value to people you care about. Thank you. Today I'm delighted to be speaking with Evette Rose. Evette, you are a counselor, the author of 19 books, and an expert trauma release practitioner. You have worked with over 7,000 people one-on-one and facilitated personal development seminars in 43 countries, touching the lives of thousands worldwide. With your transformative metaphysical anatomy technique, you guide individuals on healing journeys, and you are passionate about enabling people to understand the messages from their bodies and to also release post-traumas and unlock their inner healing potential. Evette, welcome to the show. What a delight it is to have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agi. I am very happy to be here. And thank you for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to have a really wonderful podcast today. I can feel it.
Me too. And I was telling you just before we started recording, it's been a long time since I wanted to invite you. And then, time passed and now it is, I think, the perfect time. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to explore these fascinating topics and, bring more of this powerful and transformative knowledge into the world. So I will start by saying that if you are listening today and you are interested in self-healing, this is going to be enlightening. So, Evette, one of your books is this, let me show this huge one here, the Metaphysical Anatomy, which is 680 pages. So it's quite heavy. And it covers over 700 medical conditions. And under each one, and that's the important thing, you have the emotional components associated with these diseases. And I will tell you later about my own personal story with the book, but I will come back now. And having said all that, as a kind of an introduction, before I ask you what inspired you to write this book, let's go even one step beforehand and give a little bit of, let's say, a definition, if you like. So, one key word in your book is the word psychosomatic. So, when you say psychosomatic, can you explain to the listener what it is that you mean?
That's a really great question. And I have to say that psychosomatics for me was also quite a new concept about 15 years ago, because this is when my journeys really, truly started. Psychosomatics is when we start to look at how emotions can affect the physical body. And I'm sure this is something that you all can probably relate to. We've all had headaches, right? Now, when we have a headache, in most cases, it doesn't stay, it comes and goes. But have you noticed sometimes that when you get a headache, it's normally during a time and a period when you feel a lot of stress. Maybe there's something going on in your life that you feel very in conflict with. I mean, the reasons can be endless. But at the end of the day, emotions are experienced to such an extent that it almost becomes physical. Now, it can be in the form of pain, tension, and often even, I'm not saying that psychosomatics is always the cause of ailments. However, there have been cases where psychosomatic patterns have actually led up to ailments starting. We do know that heartburn's one of them. Headaches is one of them, not all but most, because I understand some headaches are related to allergy. So that's now another psychosomatic point that if you want to take it through the psychosomatic path, you can. And also stomach ulcers. This is an excellent example also of psychosomatic stress, and back pain as well, neck pain, shoulder pain when it's not related to an injury as well.
Mhm.
So this is a very short, fun, very relatable example that I think we all can say at some point, oh, I've experienced that. I can understand that.
I think we each have our own experiences with that, and it certainly sounds true anyway. And I would
Yeah.
only add to what you were saying, that maybe not everything is psychosomatic, and of course, but
Mm,
for me, what came to my mind was that when, and most of us are trained to seek the Western medical assistance if something is wrong with our health.
right.
But I think whenever there is no explanation on the cause of your condition, and that is the case,
Mm, mm,
unfortunately, so many times with so many diseases, the solution is symptomatic and not dealing with the cause. I think it makes sense very logically for anyone to see, okay, so if my doctor can't tell me why I have this thing, what is going on that is completely missed. So the emotions being behind our body is certainly something that I think nowadays someone has to be really close-minded not to see that the
right.
correlation.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, what you said, I want to just briefly add that the reason why it's so frustrating, because you touched it a little bit on the doctors and the hospitals, and when you go to them and you have these complaints and they just pull up their shoulders and say, now what? It's a very complicated process to actually get the psychosomatic symptoms and to be treated for that. Because what they do say is that you must show persistent symptoms of psychosomatic distress for at least 6 months before they can give you an accurate diagnosis. Now, the frustrating thing with psychosomatic ailments or pain or discomfort is that it can change. And when I say it can change in its location. So now you
Mhm.
might have psychosomatic stresses related to a stomach ulcer, but maybe now, and the emotions of that shifts to a different emotional stress in your life. And that now these emotions are concentrated in a different area with different thoughts, different emotions. And now it can shift to maybe left shoulder blade pain, or now
Mhm.
it can maybe shift to heartburn. So it's really frustrating when we try to also pinpoint psychosomatics and to be able to be treated properly for it. So one thing that I would love to see in the medical industry is
Mhm.
for people to be given support for the psychosomatic symptoms, however, not necessarily with the same abrasive or invasive procedures that would be used for the actual ailment, but something that can just at least support the person so that they can then start to look at the emotional stress at the same time. So this is almost where psychologists and doctors come together. So
Mhm.
that would be very beautiful to see that. And psychiatrists are fully aware. Most of them are fully aware of the psychosomatic symptoms that clients can have, and tremendous success has been achieved also with psychiatrists, working alongside with doctors with clients who really struggle with
Mhm.
psychosomatic symptoms. So the beautiful thing is there is certain areas where this is now starting to open up to give people better support. Yeah.
If you enjoy this episode, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow, and you will also be adding value to people you care about. Thank you. And now let's get back to the episode. So we have some emotions which for many of us they go undetected much of the time, or we're not
Yes.
very aware of them. And these emotions which are not let's say processed properly, they are stored somehow in
Right.
our body, and different emotions get stored in different areas of the body, and that
Mm-hmm.
accumulates over time. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but I'm just giving a impromptu definition now how I
Yeah.
understood it. So this accumulate over time, and eventually something physical appears, which comes often as a surprise also.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a bit about how that works? And maybe is there some? I know that some specific emotions have a relationship with specific organs of the body. So, can you give me a little bit of of an overview there, and then we can move on to more perhaps practical things.
Okay, great. That's a really great question. So, from what I have seen with my research and working with people and seeing all these patterns, because I'm an observer, I love to watch and look for patterns and
Mm-hmm.
algorithms. So, this is one of
Mm-hmm.
my strengths. And what I've noticed is that people who have certain emotions, now emotions have their own vibration. They have their, I mean, they either make you feel good or they make you feel bad. And what I see with the body, its natural harmonious state is to be very harmonious, very calm. It's not really designed to be able to host a lot of heightened negative emotions such as anger, resentment, guilt, shame. This actually throws the body's inner equilibrium. It's almost like our inner landscape, our inner sanctuary off of balance. And that's when the
Mm-hmm.
body goes into a state of distress because these emotions are not in alignment with our natural harmonious flow in the body. Now, very briefly, in short, what happens is when we have emotions that become stuck, when we feel a certain way, we
Mm-hmm.
have negative thoughts as well. Now, what happens with negative thoughts is that they fire off through the electromagnetic fields, which are created with the neural pathways and the transmitters. Now, the electromagnetic fields that are generated from this have the capacity to hold and to be programmed with these thoughts and emotions. And this electromagnetic field has the capacity to be pushed through to different transmitters because our body is constantly communicating to different parts through nerves and transmitters as well. So, apart from the brain telling the body what it needs to do and the spinal cord, there's messages running back and forth. Now, these negative emotions and thoughts are also being transcended and pushed through these different nerves and these different receptors.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from that, this is internal. Apart from that, this electromagnetic field can also radiate outward. A lot of people will know and understand this as the aura. They think, well, it only stretches about 8 feet away from us. Well, no, it doesn't. It can stretch as far as you want it to go, meaning you can actually manipulate it with your intention. But
Mm-hmm.
that's now a whole different topic. That goes a little bit to my level 3 discussion that I would normally do in my workshops, right? We're now at entry level, entry point. And so when we look at it from that perspective alone, we know electromagnetic fields can program and manipulate atoms. You are made of atoms. So what happens is the electromagnetic field with these thoughts and feelings can actually transcend, for example, throughout the body. And it is constantly programming and layering in this negativity. And what happens is, because there's an electrical flow, this electrical flow becomes disrupted with negative emotions because the vibration is not in alignment with the natural state, with the natural frequency of this electromagnetic field. So now what happens as it flows through the body consistently, it actually will now become accumulated in the area of the body that relates to the type of emotion that you are energizing. So the more you energize a certain emotion, the more this electromagnetic field is now going to flow through the body, and it actually disrupts that area or organ of the body. Now, what do you think is going to happen if this electromagnetic field is constantly flowing with this low vibration, and almost you can call it a defective vibration, into these nerve receptors? Something is going to collapse at some point. Because why? It's disrupting the natural capacity for the body's nerves to communicate clearly. Now, if it can't communicate clearly, what do we think is going to happen over time? The body can't do what it needs to do. Something is going to malfunction. Now, if you add bad diet to it, if you add many other external environmental factors to it, of course, it can magnify this. And maybe this is something that already happened to the environment. Now you bring emotions into it, and your emotions is the one that tipped it off the tip of the iceberg. We don't know that. This is such a big topic. Did emotions cause it? Did the environment cause it? Did the environment cause it? But the emotions was that final breaking point, So it's like, I love this topic. I get so excited. But now, for example, you asked also for an example. So
Yes.
I love the gallbladder. The gallbladder is all about bitterness. This is when something that has made us feel not resentful. There's a difference between the emotion of resentment and bitterness. Something that you just feel really unhappy about. Resentment is a little bit more connected to a deep-seated silent anger for me, from what I've seen with clients. Now, bitterness is also very connected to a hardening of the attitude, right? So something that's been going in your life that's been maybe going wrong, things have been going well for you. And so what we do is we become stuck in that fight and flight. And it's almost like we start to use rigidity to move forward, and along with that bitterness. But now what happens is, when the gallbladder is taken out, it doesn't mean that the emotional stress that caused the gallbladder to dysfunction is resolved. It's not. What happens? It moves to the kidneys. Kidneys is next in line, because the kidneys holds the next vibration for bitterness, which now switched to resentment. So and I've seen this in people. Many, not all, but many people who have had their gallbladders removed end up having kidney stones or kidney problems. Or they start to have heartburn, because that anger, that suppressed rigidity and frustration needs to go somewhere, because it's not dealt with. So I mean, I have a whole list of examples, but that's one example to share with you. But I just quickly want to backtrack something that I know anyone who is new here is going to absolutely love this, and is this so relatable. I want to touch back on the electromagnetic fields, meaning the field that not just flows through us, but radiates outward as well. Our aura. A lot of people call it the aura. So let's call it that for the sake of our conversation and for everyone who's listening. Now, okay, I'm sure you've seen someone sit there, but you couldn't see their face. But you could feel something just didn't feel right. Maybe they felt really sad, they felt really depressed, or something just felt really heavy. And you noticed that, but you couldn't prove it. You've also spoken to someone whose face does not reflect how you're feeling when you talk to them, right? Sometimes maybe someone is smiling, but you feel your heart is racing, or suddenly your stomach feels really upset, or you just feel really sad, or you feel really frustrated. And like, where is this coming from? This is when our electromagnetic fields are communicating. So remember, I touched on how these electromagnetic fields can hold our thoughts and emotions, and how that can program and transfer that data to atoms. You are atoms. Now, these electromagnetic fields are flowing between you and that person. And your electromagnetic fields are picking up what they're doing and feeling, and you can also sense what's being sent back from that person to you. We spontaneously do this. Why? It's an instinctive, natural response to constantly connect to our senses. Our
Mm.
senses is what's driving this. When you walk somewhere, you don't just blindly trust. There's a part of you that's always a little bit just aware of your environment, right? You can sense, is things okay? Do I feel good here? Do I feel bad here? You all have felt this. Now, this includes now with people more so. And what's happening is your electromagnetic field is reading the information in their atoms. That transfer of information is coming back to you, relaying and triggering emotions, sensations, and eliciting subconscious memories so that you can translate and relate to what is happening right now. Why am I feeling this? And then a message comes forward, and that's called your intuition. And that's how this is now being beautifully translated. And now I'm speaking biologically. Yes, we have the soul aspect, but I mean, I think that's probably podcast number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 7 later on. But just to keep it now really fun, very easy, very simple, these are really important aspects to have a look at and to consider as well. And this is something that I know for a fact that each and every single one of you listening here right now, you have experienced this.
When you were saying earlier to constantly connect to our senses, I think that was the phrase that you used. For me, what came to my mind was being in the present moment, because when you are in the present moment, you are connected
Yeah.
to your senses and you can feel what is happening. So it was a really good reminder of a very simple truth that once we follow it, makes things very different in our life, I think. And you use the word intuition, which was, the way of the body speaking in the end to you to understand. And that's actually, I wanted to discuss this with you a bit more, because you have in your book you say that actually it is the subtitle, your body is talking, are you listening? So there is this language, this dialogue between the body and the mind, or whatever is even beyond there. So I wanted to, you mentioned the word intuition. I wanted to ask you if you can bring this intuition, or this voice, or this language that the body speaks to us, in terms of our health in particular, since this is the topic we're discussing about. Is there something that can you give me an example of something that you have seen commonly people experiencing intuitively, that means that something is not right, but for whatever reason it goes unnoticed unless it escalates in the future? Are there some common
Mm-hmm.
things there, or messages?
Oh, yes. So now, first of all, there's something that we need to understand first. I cannot tell you how many people, if not everyone, when
Mm-hmm.
I ask them,
Mm-hmm.
give me your 5 highest values or 5 highest points and areas of your life that's most important,
Mm-hmm.
they'll go, relationships, money, career, love, and friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't hear health. I'm sorry. I didn't hear health. Listen, your focus flows
Mm-hmm.
and energy flows
Mm-hmm.
what you energize. Your energy goes where your focus is. If your focus is on money, career, and all these human, I mean, the world is basically like a theme park. You know how you feel like when you go to a theme park, you're so distracted by all the lights and everything. Like it's great. Now, all these distractions that we have has pulled us away from our natural state of awareness. You can't focus on something or be aware of something if your focus is not there, period. It just doesn't work that way. We can't do more than one thing at a time, even though we think we can. We actually cannot, because the quality would be absolutely terrible of the third or second thing that you're trying to do. You're going to have to go back
Yes.
and redo it, right? So, and the body is the same. Now, if your focus is on stress, or when we're dealing also with this negative bias that the body has of, focusing more on the negative rather than the positive, focusing more on something that we maybe need to bring more of into our life, but then we're trying to find, instant gratifications or quick solutions. We love quick fixes, right? We've also built our entire life. We're masters of disassociating. We are masters of deflecting. We've literally set up our life to live in a state of avoidance. How can you become aware of something if you're constantly in a state of avoidance? You're not. That is why the body's going to come bump and it's going to give you a smack up your bum and it's going to say, hey, you're not listening. Here's the pain. Here's the ailment. But now the problem with that is we don't like to feel. We hate feeling our emotions. And that's why we're so good at deflecting. That's why we're so good at avoiding. Your emotions is the GPS of your soul. It is what tells you what's good, what's bad. And if something is bad, then do something about it. Don't just try to figure out a quick solution around it. Ask it, why are you there? Why don't we like this? We don't question anymore. We just feel distress, and then we have this knee-jerk reaction to look the other way. What is the easy fix? What is an easy solution? And you know why? Because we're living subconsciously in a state of fear. Because that's how social media have wired us. That's how life and itself has wired us. There's no energy to look at anything other than what is a threat? What do I need to overcome? Who's the biggest competitor? How am I going to survive? We're so stuck in a state of survival that we don't even realize it. Even if you have all the money in your bank account, there's always going to be something that you're going to be stressed about. It's a program. So we have to break this program and learn and understand that your emotions is your best friend. If you want to live your best life, learn and understand what are your emotions, how do they feel, even though they sometimes don't feel good. But even if they don't feel good, the only person that can change that is you. Not drugs, not alcohol, not cigarettes, not any substance. Because the state of permanence is it's non-existent. You're going to have to keep repeating that and you become the hamster in the wheel. So if you want to start to live a stable and consistent, balanced life, we need to befriend our emotions. They're there for a reason. And the moment we can start to befriend our emotions and not associate it with shame or fear of rejection or thinking, oh, if I feel this, then people are going to think that of me. These emotions is what's going to set you free. It is what's going to optimize your health. Because if you can listen to something within you that doesn't feel right and investigate that and allow yourself to investigate that, a lot of things can actually be avoided because our intuition is connected to your emotions. Everyone who comes to me and says, oh, Evette, I can't connect to my intuition. It's terrible. Can you teach me how? I'm like, yeah, let's learn how to feel your emotions, because your intuition communicates with you through visions, sensations, emotions, and feelings. If you see an image, you read that image by observing how it makes you feel. And how do you think you are relaying that data of how it makes you feel? By eliciting subconscious memories that's now being brought up biochemically. We're feeling the sensations, even though you can't consciously recall what it is. And we put together a message. If you can't feel your feelings, you are not going to be able to feel your emotions. That's why empaths are incredibly psychic. They are very highly intuitive. They are the best mediums because they can feel their emotions, but they feel it too much. Why? Because they have terrible boundaries. So I hope that helps.
It's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to, as you said in particular, that we don't like to feel our emotions, the
No.
the negative emotions anyway. So, what would you say practically to someone that gets it, understands what you just said right now, but still sitting down with the emotion of grief or whatever else emotion is there is difficult? Is there some kind of a tool or a trick or something that can
Right.
help take you to that side, that you actually sit down and investigate, as you said, the emotion rather than rushing to distract yourself with something
Mm.
else?
I love that. That's such a great question. And I need to be careful how I answer this now because and you just touched on grief, right? So the approach for grief would be a little bit different to what it is for anger.
Mm-hmm.
So, first of all, but and there is a big generalization that I can use here. And the best one here is to be in a state of allowance. We don't allow ourselves to feel. Now, what happens? We fight against the emotions. We resist the emotions, right? We resist it. But now what happens is that resistance takes energy. And that's where your focus now is. Your focus is on resisting something that you don't want to feel, which means we actually lock in that bad negative emotion, because in order to stay in a state of resistance, we need the emotion to be there. You see how they go together. So now what happens if you want to let go of that emotion, but you can't because the resistance is there, it's holding on to it? Accept that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Give space to the fact that it's there. Give it permission to be there. And the structure of it slowly, is not going to all happen in one go, but that's the starting point of it collapsing, because there's nothing holding this emotion in place. And that includes judgment. Notice how you judge yourself when you're upset. Notice how you judge yourself when you're sad.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that. Crying is a natural healing cycle of the body. Did you know that? It's a that this is one way that the nervous system regulates itself. But look at the trauma and the shame and the distress that we have associated with a healing natural cycle of the body. So the moment when the body goes into a state of healing, we stop it. Oh no, this is bad. Don't cry. It's shameful. Oh no, now the subconscious mind gets fired off. I was smacked or, beaten up when I was crying. So don't cry. It's bad to cry. And now people come to me and they say, Evette, oh my God, but I cry every day, but I don't feel better. So what you're saying doesn't make sense. Now my next question to you is going to be, do you feel safe crying? If you don't feel safe while the body is trying to complete a healing cycle, that cycle will be blocked. Why? The nervous system will only regulate itself when it feels safe.
Mm-hmm.
That is why when you have a healthy friendship and a healthy partnership, a lot of people heal in these dynamics. Why? Because they feel safe. It's incredible. But we don't feel safe feeling safe. We don't trust calmness. We don't trust relaxation. Why? Because we've become addicted and reliant on being overly aware, being hypervigilant, because we become addicted to the cortisol, because that cortisol gives us the high to work and to achieve. And we associate cortisol with achievement. But too much cortisol kills your immune system. And on top of that, now you have negative emotions. Your body is using energy to stay in the state of fight or flight. Who's looking after the body when organisms invade it? Not the immune system. The immune system's kaput. It's exhausted. And that's how we become ill. I mean, I can talk about this for hours, but this is just an example, and I get very passionate about it. I mean, this is something that I would love for people to just start to entertain. this
Yeah.
concept and this idea, because that's the
Yes.
beginning of your awakening. That is the beginning of you taking control of your health.
Hmm. It's a great point, and actually, I wanted to thank you for becoming so passionate while you were explaining it, because I think the intensity of the message goes
Yeah,
even
it
more, and
does.
and it is so important to understand that and observe it. It makes such a huge difference. So yeah, thank you for sharing it in such a way. Um, and I will share briefly, because I mentioned that in the beginning, my own personal, let's say, involvement with how I got back into, getting the book and reading.
Yeah.
And it was a few months ago when I got a diagnosis all of a sudden of a melanoma. For people that may not
Okay.
know exactly what that is cancer of the skin. So that came,
Mm-hmm.
as a complete surprise to me at that
Mm-hmm.
time. So
Mm-hmm.
I immediately remembered that about your book and got it. And then, one thing led to another, and I discovered all those other fascinating things. But what really I got uh, as a key message there is that my skin is telling me something. The funny thing is that, and now I'm sharing completely honestly and vulnerably, that the melanoma was in one area of my body that sun never sees it, because it's covered, by the swimming suit.
Mm-hmm.
So the theory that it is caused by sun or excessive,
Mm.
it really didn't apply at all. If it was anywhere
No.
else on my body, I would say, yeah, okay, you know what, I am Greek. I grew up in Greece. I had lots of exposure in the sun, but
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
not where it was.
Mm.
So that was,
Mm.
the interesting thing. And then I read, of course, the connections that you have in
Mm.
the book, and it was much of it, from what I remember, is similar to the conversation we had been just having about emotions and reluctant to express emotions, or keeping
Yeah.
sweeping emotions under the
Mm.
carpet. So it's, all this is very relevant and also personal for me. So
Mm.
it's
Mm.
incredible to get this kind of
Mm.
completely different approach and reflect on yourself. And some things,
Right.
the important thing for me was that it felt, and I'm sure you have seen that thousands of times with the people you work
Mm.
with, that it feels right immediately when you ask the questions, or when you say something, you say, aha, yep, it makes sense.
Right. 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 And thank you for sharing that. I mean that it's a journey, right? And anyone that probably has the same condition as you
Mhm,
would deeply appreciate and relate to this conversation as well. And it's a very powerful example that you just gave now, that
mhm,
this is not even related to the sun. There's so much, there's so many missing links, right? And psychosomatics really truly can help us to bridge
mhm,
quite a lot of gaps. Yeah.
mhm.
Thank you for sharing that.
Indeed, thank you. And I actually wanted, as we start concluding today, with this truly fascinating conversation, I wanted to ask how, because it's been years since you wrote that book. How do you feel when you hear about this, profound impact that people that you had on people with the book, or like, individuals like myself, even years after you made the book? How does that feel? Were you expecting this kind of, resonance?
I think sometimes my self-esteem is sometimes a bit like, oh my goodness, I think they're talking about someone else. That's someone else's work. You know, I think sometimes a little bit. I feel, of course, I feel deeply humbled, but it's so emotional sometimes and so incredibly overwhelming to
Mhm,
hear the impact that you've had on people. And that's exactly what I wanted to have. I always said, from a very young age, my mom said to me, I don't remember this, but my mom said to me, I was one day standing in her bedroom and I was 13 and I was brushing my hair. And I looked at her in the mirror because she was standing behind me and I said, I'm going to live a life of impact. I don't remember saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so thankful that this is exactly the path that I am on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to create impact. It doesn't matter what kind of impact it is, but as long as it's positive, as long as it helps people to move and shake in a positive way, for me, that is absolutely fulfilling and so heartwarming because believe it or not, I wanted to become a lawyer and a crime scene investigator. And I studied it. I studied it for a year. And then thank God I didn't have enough money to continue my studies. And I really had to focus full time on work because it threw me back onto the path that was where I needed to be. Not that that role was not important because it is. God knows we need those people, unfortunately, because the world is not as balanced as we would like it to be. But I am where I need to be. I'm exactly where I need to be, and I'm thankful for that. So yeah, when you said like wrote these books so many years ago, would I have imagined all of this? Absolutely not. You know, I would have been at crime scenes if things didn't change or shift for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. But I have a couple of quick questions that I always ask my guests when we conclude. Before we go there, I would like to for you to direct the listener to your work and in particular to the workshop that you will share with us today.
Sure, I would love to. So, what we have been talking about today, so if everyone would love to learn more about psychosomatic messages, how to read the body like a book, but without the book, I actually have a fun 1 day workshop coming up that is for anyone. You don't need any prerequisites, you don't need any experiences, where I'm actually going to teach you how to read the body, how to connect to the body, how to work with it, and also how to do intuitive readings. We're going to work a little bit on opening up your intuition as well, meaning get in touch with your emotions, but in a safe, gentle way. I'm going to show you a lot of cool, fun tricks around that. And so we have that workshop coming up, and it's called Trauma Decoded, Unveiling Hidden Messages in the Body. And it will be on the 8th of June. And yes, there will be a replay available as well.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And let me then ask you my two quick questions. The first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
If you had to ask me this question 15 years ago, I would say an absolute emotional mess and conundrum. But
Yes.
now personal development for me means investing in my mental health and well-being.
Mm.
And I shamelessly do so because the benefits is incredible, not just for me, but my children, my husband, and everyone else in my life. It's the greatest gift that I ever gave myself.
Thank you. Yes, it's personal development is collective. It's more than personal. It's as the term
Yes.
implies. And
Yeah.
a hypothetical question, then, Yvette. If you were to go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give her?
That is such a great question. I would just, I would just say, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. Because sometimes when I do healing work as well, I actually go back to moments and times where I feel a little bit unresolved. And I pretend that I go back and I talk to myself and I look myself in the eye and I say, Evette, you're going to make it. And it somehow just elicits this sense of empowerment in that moment of trauma. And this is one thing that I always keep telling myself, just, I made it and you're going to make it. You're going to keep making it. Yeah. So this, and it, yeah, I mean, it's a very personal story, or not even story. I mean, I actually really do this, that I do with myself on a regular basis, especially when I have a bad day, when I wobble a little bit, when my confidence maybe flies out the window a little bit. I keep telling myself, you made it and you're going to keep making it.
Thank you for sharing that, and it's so useful to know that these moments of self-doubt come to everyone, and it's not just us.
Oh
As
yeah.
sometimes we think it's just us,
Yeah.
everyone else has got it figured out.
No. I give myself regular pep talks, let me tell you that. And positive affirmations, my mindset is my greatest asset. And I invest in it even with my own time, not by doing other things, but my own time. And it's for free.
Yeah. Indeed. So do I. So this is a great message.
Wonderful.
Evette, I want to thank you so much for this conversation today and what you shared with us. Before we conclude, what's one parting piece of advice for the listener that, or some action maybe that they can take to advance on their self-healing journey?
Mm. But the best advice that worked for me was to realize that when your body doesn't work the way that you want it to, or you don't always understand it, it's never, ever, ever working against you. It is working for you. Your body is your greatest asset. It is your greatest cheerleader. Your body's only purpose is to keep you alive. And sometimes that means it needs to bring up things that's causing it distress and dis-ease, because so that you can take action. So we need to learn how to reinterpret messages from the body and see it as an actual message and not your body retaliating against you. Your body is not failing you. It's working for you. That heart in your chest is beating for you.
This was the second out of the top 3 episodes of the year that I've handpicked from the most insightful and popular episodes of Personal Development Mastery Podcast in 2024. I hope you found it enlightening. If you want to continue the journey further, join us in our free community Mastery Seekers Tribe. It is a space to move from inspiration to implementation, from knowledge to action. If you're not already a member, you are invited. Go to masteryseekerstribe.com. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in,